Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'll be talking about shared turtles alone together. There are a couple of different parts to this, so this is another one. Quote, I hear a certain fatigue with the difficulties of life with people. We insert robots into every narrative of human frailty. People make too many demands. Robot demands would be of a more manageable sort. People disappoint. Robots will not. When people talk about relationships with robots, they talk about cheating husbands, wives who fake orgasms, and children who take drugs. Hopefully this isn't you. They talk about how hard it is to understand family and friends. From this, why do people have relationships with other people? It sounds a little hard. I would argue that everyone is hard to understand and difficult to communicate to. It's never always very simple or easy. But the beauty and splendor of human relationships are divine from this complexity, difficulty, and pain. My God, I sound so deep. Turkle's book is about how we are changed as technology offers us substitutes for connecting with each other face to face. As we instant message, email, text, and Twitter, technology redraws the boundaries between intimacy and solitude. I have a couple questions. How does technology change us? And does technology promise intimacy but deliver solitude? I would argue that the way that technology changes us oftentimes, is that it dehumanizes us due to its push away from humanity. So again, instead of interacting with one another face to face, we just mediate that conversation through these instant messages, emails, texts, etc. Does technology promise intimacy but deliver solitude? I would argue that we are, as per Turkle's title in her book, alone together. Quote, we talk of getting rid of our emails as though these notes are so much excess baggage. Teenagers avoid making phone calls, fearful that they reveal too much. They would rather text than talk. Adults too choose keyboards over the human voice. It is more efficient, they say. Things that happen in real time take too much time. My question to you is, what are we doing when we get rid of our email? Like, what actually happens when we do that? You might want to pause to think about it. I would argue that by doing this, we essentially are editing our lives. We're kind of taking out different pieces of it. And by doing this, we consciously subtract the busy, irrelevant, or painful parts. But aren't these busy, irrelevant, or even painful parts of our lives that we're editing out, that we're excising from our lives, aren't they in fact the marrow, the deepest part of our lives? Man, I'm so deep. Quote, I was enthusiastic about online worlds as identity workshops when they first appeared, and all of their possibilities remain. Creating an avatar, perhaps of a different age, a different gender, or different temperament, is a way to explore the self. But if you're spending 3, 4, or 5 hours a day in an online game or virtual world, a time commitment that is not unusual, there's got to be someplace you're not. And that someplace you're not is often with your family and friends, sitting around, playing Scrabble face to face, taking a walk, watching a movie, together in the old-fashioned way. My question to you is our online time a zero-sum game where if you do one thing, you can't do another one? You may want to pause to think that through. My answer would be, if it's used unconsciously, when you're online, it can easily devolve into something negative. For example, again, maybe you do this, maybe somebody you know does this. They'll be playing an online game. They'll be immersed in a virtual world for hours and hours and hours and online. And I'm far from wanting to judge anyone that spends any time online, because I certainly spend more than enough of my time online. When we do it unconsciously and not with a conscious decision, it can become addictive and not particularly good for you in terms of the way you socialize or form your identity or feel good about yourself. We discovered the network, the world of connectivity, to be uniquely suited to the overworked and overscheduled life it makes possible. And now we look to the network to defend us against loneliness, even as we use it to control the intensity of our connections. Technology makes it easy to communicate when we wish to and to disengage at will. So from this, I ask you, what is the impact of controlling the intensity of our connections? Technology makes it easy to communicate when we wish and to engage at will. So what is the impact of that? I would argue that essentially human relationships can often be intense, uncontrollable, and engaged. And when we try to control them, when we try to make sure that the intensity of them are not too high and they potentially could overwhelm us, it kind of takes away what the essential nature of human relationships, which are oftentimes for the people that are close to us, they can be very intense, they can be very uncontrollable, and they can be very engaging. Sorry about this. This is a long one, but it's a goodie. Quote, these days it is easy for people to end up unsure if they are closer together or further apart. I remember my own sense of disorientation the first time I realized that I was alone together. I'm sure you've all gone through this, at least a sort of a version of this. The back conference she was attending, the grand ballroom was Wi-Fi enabled. The speaker was using the web for his presentation, laptops were open through the audience, fingers were flying, and there was a sense of great concentration and intensity. But not many in the audience were attending to the speaker. Most people seemed to be doing their email, downloading files, and surfing the net. The man next to me was searching for a New Yorker cartoon to illustrate his upcoming presentation. Every once in a while, an audience member gave the speaker some attention, lowering their laptop screens in a kind of curtsy, a gesture of courtesy. Does this sound familiar to you? If so, what is its meaning, and what is its impact? I'm sure, again, most of you have gone through something like this. I would argue that, this falls under the very title of Turkle's book. It's like we're alone together. So we're physically together with one another. We're in a room with the speaker. The reason we're at a conference, if you're in the academic field or you're in a professional field where there are conferences, is the reason you go, I would assume for a really high percentage of people, is you're interested in the underlying subject matter. But things like this, oftentimes with our devices, we can kind of easily forget what the main purpose is, the speaker, the seminar, whatever's going on, and just kind of be in our own little worlds. And we're, again, physically together, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, we're far apart. That was another section of Sherry Turkle's Alone Together. Please stay tuned. There's another one. Please look also on this channel for another part. And please, if you have any questions, thoughts, reflections on this, please feel free to add them below. Take care.